The champagne glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor of my downtown condo. Amanda stood in my doorway, her wedding dress draped over one arm, that familiar smirk playing across her lips. "You know what would be the perfect wedding gift, Neil," she said, stepping over the broken glass like it was nothing. "You disappearing from our lives forever." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. 28 years of being the devoted older brother, of sacrificing everything for her dreams. And this was how she really felt. What she didn't know was that this luxury condo she was standing in, the one she'd been planning her reception, and the one she assumed belonged to our family, actually belonged entirely to me. 3 years earlier, I sat in the mahogany-paneled office of Peterson and Associates, our family's longtime attorneys. The funeral for our parents had been just 2 days before, and the weight of their loss still pressed against my chest like a boulder. Amanda clutched a tissue in her left hand while scrolling through her phone with her right already planning what she called her grief recovery vacation to Hawaii. "The estate distribution is fairly straightforward," Mr. Peterson explained, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "The downtown condominium at 5th and Main, valued at approximately $450,000, goes entirely to Neil Robert Harrison." He looked directly at me. "Your parents specified this was in recognition of the sacrifices you made during your college years to support Amanda's education." Amanda barely looked up from her phone. "I had dropped out of my computer science program at Northwestern during my junior year when Dad's small accounting firm hit rough times. While Amanda continued her expensive liberal arts degree at a private college, I worked 60-hour weeks at a tech startup, sending home every spare dollar to keep our family afloat and ensure she could finish school without student loans. The remaining assets, including the family home in Riverside and your father's life insurance policy, will be split equally between both children," Mr. Peterson continued. Amanda nodded absently, assuming the condo was just another shared asset she'd eventually inherit half of. I never corrected her assumption. When she graduated and couldn't find work in her art history major, I let her move into the spare bedroom of my condo. When she started dating James Morrison, a smooth-talking investment banker with expensive tastes, I welcomed him into our home for dinners and holidays. When Amanda announced their engagement last year, I smiled and offered the spacious living room of my condo as the perfect intimate wedding venue. "Neil, you're the absolute best brother anyone could ask for," she had gushed, throwing her arms around me. "Having the wedding here will save us so much money. James says venues are charging $20,000 just for one night. This way we can spend that money on our honeymoon in Europe." What I didn't mention was that I had been sleeping on my own living room couch for 8 months, having given Amanda and James my master bedroom so they could properly plan their future together. I worked from my laptop at the kitchen counter while they spread wedding magazines and fabric samples across every surface of what was legally my home. James, with his perfectly styled blonde hair and his collection of expensive watches, treated me like a helpful roommate rather than the homeowner. "Neil, buddy, could you grab us some of that good wine from your cabinet?" he would ask, as if I were a server in my own home. Amanda and I are trying to decide between salmon or chicken for the reception menu. My sister had transformed from the grateful college graduate I had supported into someone I barely recognized. She wore James's influence like an expensive coat, adopting his dismissive attitude toward anyone who didn't meet their social standards. When our cousin David, a hardworking electrician, visited for Christmas, Amanda actually suggested he might feel more comfortable coming to the back door because his work clothes didn't match their dinner party aesthetic. "Amanda, he's family," I'd said quietly. "Family should know how to present themselves appropriately," she replied, echoing something James had obviously told her. "We can't have our guests thinking we associate with just anyone." The shift was gradual but unmistakable. Phone calls that used to include genuine questions about my life became brief updates about wedding plans. Conversations became monologues about flower arrangements and honeymoon destinations. When I mentioned getting a promotion at my software company, Amanda responded with, "That's nice, Neil. Now, what do you think about having the ceremony at sunset?" James thinks it would look more romantic in the photos. Uncle Frank, my father's brother, and the one family member who had stayed close through everything pulled me aside after Christmas dinner. "Son, I'm worried about you," he said, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "You're giving and giving, but what are you getting back?" "She's my sister, Uncle Frank. She's all the family I have left." "Family goes both ways, Neil. Your father would be proud of how you've taken care of her, but he wouldn't want you to disappear in the process." He paused, studying my face. "Have you told her about the condo ownership?" I shook my head. "It would just complicate things." "She's happy planning the wedding here." "And after the wedding, what happens to your home then?" I didn't have an answer, but I was about to find out. The climactic twist came 2 weeks later when I overheard Amanda on the phone with James discussing their post-wedding living arrangements. "Of course we'll keep the condo," she said, laughing. "Neil will understand. He can find a small apartment somewhere. James, you're brilliant for suggesting we make this our permanent home. The location is perfect for your work commute, and honestly, Neil has gotten way too comfortable thinking he can just live here forever." The words froze me in place outside my own bedroom door. In her mind, I was the temporary guest in my own home, and my years of sacrifice had earned me nothing but the expectation that I would quietly disappear when it became convenient for her new life. The rehearsal dinner took place at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, where James had insisted on booking the private dining room. I arrived precisely on time, wearing my best navy suit, carrying the envelope containing my speech about Amanda's journey from little sister to bride. The room buzzed with conversation as 50 guests mingled over cocktails and appetizers that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. I spotted Amanda immediately radiant in a cream-colored dress that perfectly complemented her auburn hair. She was surrounded by her bridesmaids, all perfectly coordinated in their designer outfits, laughing at something Patricia Chen had whispered. Patricia, Amanda's maid of honor and college roommate, had always rubbed me the wrong way, with her calculating smile and tendency to speak about people as if they were investments rather than human beings. "Neil, there you are," Amanda called out, waving me over with the enthusiasm of someone greeting a helpful caterer rather than her only brother. "Everyone, this is Neil. He's been absolutely invaluable in helping us prepare for tomorrow." The introductions that followed felt like a series of small cuts. To James's college friends, I was Amanda's brother who's been letting us use his place. To her sorority sisters, I was the one who's been so sweet about helping with everything. Not once did anyone acknowledge me as a successful software engineer or as the person who had made Amanda's education possible. But the real devastation began when I excused myself to find the restroom and overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. James was holding court near the bar, speaking to a group of his groomsmen in the confident tone of someone who believed himself completely unobserved. "Honestly, guys, Amanda's family situation worked out perfectly for us," James said, swirling his whiskey. "Her brother is this pathetic computer nerd who's been living off their parents' money in that downtown condo. Amanda says he's never even had a serious relationship because he's too socially awkward." "What happens to him after you guys take over the place?" asked one of the groomsmen, a tall man with prematurely gray hair. James laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Amanda's been working on that. She's convinced most of the family that Neil has some kind of social anxiety disorder that makes him too dependent on her. She's been telling everyone that living independently would actually be good for his mental health." My hands clenched into fists as I listened from around the corner hidden by a decorative column. "The guy actually thinks we're grateful for his help," James continued. "Amanda showed me his bank statements when we were applying for credit cards. He's been supporting her lifestyle for years, but he's too much of a pushover to set any boundaries. It's actually kind of sad but convenient for us." "Wait, you guys got credit cards in his name?" The gray-haired groomsman sounded surprised. Amanda handled all that. She said he gave her permission, but honestly, I don't think he's smart enough to understand what he agreed to. The wedding expenses alone are going to take him years to pay off. But Amanda says he'll just accept it because he's desperate to keep her in his life. The conversation continued, but I had heard enough. I stumbled back toward the main dining room, my mind reeling from the revelation that not only had Amanda been lying about me to our family and friends, but she had also been systematically destroying my financial security. Patricia intercepted me near the entrance to the dining room, her smile as sharp as a blade. "Neil, sweetie, you look a little pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Good, because Amanda was just telling me how worried she's been about you lately. She mentioned that you've been having some emotional difficulties adjusting to her engagement." Patricia's voice dripped with false concern. "It's completely understandable, of course. Change can be so difficult for some people. The implication was clear. Amanda hadn't just been spreading lies about my mental health to James. She had been building a comprehensive narrative that painted me as unstable and overly dependent on her. This wasn't just casual dismissal. This was calculated character assassination designed to justify whatever they had planned for after the wedding. "Patricia, what exactly has Amanda told you about my situation?" Her smile widened. "Oh, nothing specific, honey. Just that you've been struggling with some personal issues and that she's been trying to help you become more independent. She's such a caring sister, always putting your well-being first." Uncle Frank appeared at my elbow, his weathered face creased with concern. "Neil's son, could I have a word with you outside?" We stepped onto the restaurant's outdoor patio, where the evening air carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the neighboring buildings. Uncle Frank's expression was grave, as he lit his pipe, a habit my aunt had been trying to break him of for 30 years. "I tried to warn you earlier, but I don't think you understood how serious this has become," he began. "Amanda has been calling family members for weeks, telling them that you've been having what she calls episodes of possessive behavior regarding the wedding." "Episodes?" "She told your Aunt Margaret that you've been making inappropriate demands about the wedding arrangements and that you've been claiming ownership of assets that belong to the family. She suggested that you might not even attend the wedding because you've become too emotionally unstable to handle her happiness." The pieces of Amanda's strategy clicked into place with sickening clarity. She wasn't just planning to take over my home, she was creating a narrative that would make my absence seem like a reasonable response to my own mental health crisis. If I disappeared after the wedding, everyone would assume it was because I couldn't handle the reality of her new life. "Uncle Frank, there's something you need to know about the condo." "I already know, son. I was there when your father wrote his will. That property belongs to you alone." His eyes flashed with anger. "What I want to know is why you haven't told Amanda the truth." "I thought I was being kind. I thought I was protecting her feelings." And now, before I could answer, Amanda herself appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with wine and excitement. "Neil, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. James wants to make a toast and we need the family together." She walked over and linked her arm through mine with the casual affection of someone who had never questioned her right to my support. "Uncle Frank, isn't this exciting? Tomorrow I'm going to be Mrs. James Morrison, and we'll finally have our perfect life in our beautiful home." The word "our" hit me like a physical blow. She didn't just assume she would inherit half of my condo eventually. She believed it already belonged to her. "Amanda," I said carefully, "we should probably talk about the living arrangements after the wedding." Her laugh was light and dismissive. "Oh, Neil, don't worry about any of that tonight. James and I have everything figured out. You'll see." But Uncle Frank stepped forward, his voice unusually sharp. "Actually, Amanda, I think tonight would be perfect for that conversation. Why don't you tell Neil exactly what you and James have figured out?" Something in his tone made Amanda's smile falter slightly, but she recovered quickly. Well, obviously Neil will need to find his own place eventually. James and I can't live with a roommate forever. But there's no rush. We're family. And what about the expenses Neil has been covering? The credit cards, the wedding costs? Amanda's face hardened almost imperceptibly. Uncle Frank, I think you're confused about our financial arrangements. Neil has been helping because he wants to help. Everything we've done has been with his complete agreement. Show him the documents, Uncle Frank said quietly. I'm sorry. Show Neil the credit card applications and loan documents you've been signing. The ones with his name on them. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's face cycled through several expressions before settling on a cold mask I had never seen before. When she spoke, her voice was entirely different from the warm, grateful sister I thought I knew. Neil, you're not going to let Uncle Frank ruin my wedding weekend with his paranoid theories, are you? You know, I would never do anything to hurt you. Everything I've done has been for our family. But the damage was already done. The climactic twist was the realization that Amanda's betrayal wasn't impulsive or accidental. She had been systematically planning to take control of my life while destroying my reputation and financial security. The grateful little sister I had sacrificed everything for had become a stranger who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to her perfect life. Back at my condo after the rehearsal dinner, I sat at my kitchen counter surrounded by financial statements and legal documents. The magnitude of Amanda's deception was worse than I had imagined. She had not only forged my signature on 3 separate credit card applications, but had also used my condo as collateral for a $15,000 personal loan that I knew nothing about. The front door opened with the confidence of someone who had never questioned their right to enter. Amanda walked in wearing her bridesmaid robe, her hair in curlers, looking like the picture of bridal innocence. James followed behind her, already dressed in his expensive pajama set, carrying a bottle of champagne, and wearing the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had won. Neil, we need to talk, Amanda announced, settling onto my leather sofa, as if she were holding court in her own living room. Yes, we do, I replied, gesturing to the papers spread across my counter. I found some interesting documents today. James moved to stand behind Amanda, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. The gesture felt rehearsed, as if they had planned this confrontation together. Look, buddy, I know Uncle Frank got you all worked up tonight. But Amanda explained everything. You gave her permission to handle some of the financial arrangements for the wedding. I gave her permission to forge my signature on loan documents. Amanda's laugh was bright and brittle, like glass about to shatter. Oh, Neil, you're being so dramatic. Those were just technicalities. You know I would never do anything to hurt you financially. Besides, what difference does it make? We're family. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Except that's not how ownership works, Amanda, and it's definitely not how fraud works. The word fraud hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. James stepped forward, his expensive cologne unable to mask the sudden tension radiating from his body. I think you need to be very careful about the accusations you're making, Neil. Amanda has been nothing but generous in including you in our wedding planning. Including me? The absurdity of the statement made me laugh, though there was no humor in the sound. James, this is my home. I own this condo. Amanda doesn't live here out of generosity. She lives here because I've been supporting her for 3 years. Amanda's face went through a remarkable transformation. The sweet, slightly confused expression melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating that I had never seen before. When she spoke, her voice carried a venom that made my stomach turn. Your home, she said, standing slowly. Neil, you really are more pathetic than I thought. You've been living in this fantasy where you're the generous older brother, but the reality is that you're a 28-year-old man with no friends, no romantic life, and no future beyond taking care of his little sister. Each word was chosen for maximum damage, delivered with surgical precision. Do you know what James and I call you when we're alone? We call you the placeholder. You've been keeping our home warm and paying our bills until we were ready to start our real life together." James nodded, emboldened by Amanda's cruelty. "She's right, man. You've been useful, but this has always been temporary. Adults eventually have to face reality and stop living in their childhood bedrooms." "This isn't my childhood bedroom," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "This is my property, legally purchased with my money and legally willed to me by our parents." Amanda's smile was razor sharp. "Prove it." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder of documents. "Because I have paperwork showing that you've been living here under a family arrangement, that you've been emotionally dependent on me since our parents died, and that you've been struggling with mental health issues that affect your decision-making capacity." "Where did you get those documents?" "I created them," she said simply. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right legal letterhead and a printer. Patricia works for a law firm, you know. She's been incredibly helpful in making sure we have everything we need to protect ourselves from any irrational behavior you might exhibit after the wedding. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Amanda been planning to steal my home and destroy my credit, but she had been manufacturing evidence to support a legal case that would paint me as mentally unstable and financially incompetent. James pulled out his phone and began recording. "Neil, Amanda and I are concerned about your emotional stability. You're making wild accusations and talking about fraud and ownership in ways that don't make sense. We think you might need professional help." The sophisticated nature of their manipulation was breathtaking. They weren't just planning to take my home. They were creating evidence to support their narrative that I was too unstable to own property or make financial decisions. If I fought back, the recording would support their claims that I was paranoid and potentially dangerous. But Amanda wasn't finished. She moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting would have been. "You know what the really beautiful part is? Neil, tomorrow when I walk down the aisle in the home you think belongs to you, every single guest will know exactly what kind of person you really are." "What does that mean?" "It means I've spent months telling them the truth about you. How you've been possessive and controlling about the wedding plans. How you've been making inappropriate demands about financial arrangements. How you've been claiming ownership of family property that doesn't belong to you." She paused, studying my face like a scientist observing an experiment. "By tomorrow evening, everyone we know will understand that you're not the generous brother you pretend to be. You're a sad, lonely man who's been manipulating your grieving sister for years." James stepped closer, his presence clearly meant to be intimidating. "And if you try to disrupt Amanda's wedding day with your delusions about ownership and fraud, we have plenty of witnesses ready to testify about your unstable behavior." The final twist came when Amanda delivered the line that would haunt me forever. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, as if she were speaking to a child who needed to be corrected with kindness. "You know what would be the perfect wedding gift, Neil," she said, her smile radiating false sweetness. "You disappearing from our lives forever. Just pack up your things, find somewhere else to go, and let the rest of us move on with our lives in peace." She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "Because honestly, Neil, what do you really bring to this family besides guilt and obligation? When was the last time anyone was actually happy to see you rather than just tolerating your presence?" The words were crafted to destroy whatever confidence I had left. But as I looked at my sister standing in my living room wearing my engagement gift to her, a pearl necklace that had cost me 2 months' salary planning to steal my home while destroying my reputation, I felt something shift inside me. Inside. She wanted me to disappear. I was about to grant her wish in a way she would never forget. "You're absolutely right, Amanda," I said quietly. "I think disappearing is exactly what I should do." Her smile widened with triumph, not realizing that she had just given me the perfect justification for everything I was about to do. After all, I would only be giving her exactly what she had asked for. By 6 in the morning, I was sitting in the office of Rachel Martinez, the estate attorney, who had handled my parents' will. Rachel had been practicing law for 15 years and had seen every form of family betrayal imaginable. But when I showed her the forged documents Amanda had created, her eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Neil, this goes well beyond sibling rivalry," she said, spreading the papers across her oak desk. "Your sister has committed multiple felonies, identity theft, forgery, fraud. If you wanted to press charges, she could face serious prison time." "I don't want her in prison," I replied. "I want her to understand the consequences of her choices." Rachel leaned back in her leather chair, studying me with the calculating gaze of someone who had spent years helping people navigate family crises. "What exactly do you have in mind?" I outlined my plan. And Rachel's expression shifted from concern to something approaching admiration. "It's completely legal," she confirmed. "The condo is your property, free and clear. You have every right to sell it, especially given the fraudulent liens she's placed against it. The timing is dramatic, but perfectly within your rights." "What about the wedding?" "She can't hold a private event in a property she doesn't own without the owner's permission. If you revoke that permission and the new owners want the property vacant, she'll have to find a new venue immediately." Rachel paused. "Of course, finding a venue for 50 people on 12 hours' notice might be challenging." That's her problem to solve. My next stop was First National Bank, where I had been a customer for 8 years. Margaret Wilson, the branch manager, was a woman in her 50s who had helped me secure my original mortgage. When I explained the situation, her face grew progressively more serious. "Mr. Harrison, I'm going to be frank with you," she said. "We see this type of family financial abuse more often than people realize. Your sister has essentially stolen your identity to finance her lifestyle. The fact that she's your family member doesn't make it any less serious." Within 2 hours, Margaret had helped me freeze all accounts that Amanda had access to, reported the fraudulent credit cards, and initiated disputes on every transaction I hadn't personally authorized. The wedding expenses, the honeymoon deposits, even the engagement ring James had purchased using my credit, all of it was being reversed. "What happens to their financial obligations?" I asked. "That becomes their responsibility," Margaret replied. "The vendors will require payment from someone, but it won't be you." My third stop was the office of David Chen, a real estate agent who specialized in luxury downtown properties. David had sold me the condo 3 years earlier and had been asking me for months if I ever considered selling, given how much the property values had increased. "You want to sell immediately?" David asked, his excitement barely contained. "Neil, I have 3 buyers who have been waiting for a property exactly like yours to come on the market. We could close within 7 days if you're willing to accept a cash offer." "How much?" $575,000. The market has been incredible for downtown properties. The number was more than I had dared hope for. Not only would I recoup every dollar Amanda had stolen, but I would have enough money to start completely fresh anywhere in the country. "One condition," I said. "The new owners get possession tomorrow evening. I need this property empty by Sunday." David's grin was predatory in the best possible way. "I'll make the calls." That afternoon, I drove to Office Depot and purchased 50 manila envelopes, a box of high-quality paper, and a printer cartridge. The letters I was about to write would require careful attention to detail. Each envelope would contain 4 items: a copy of my parents' will showing my sole ownership of the condo, photocopies of the forged financial documents with Amanda's signature, highlighted a brief explanation of the sacrifices I had made for Amanda's education and wedding, and the truth about her campaign to destroy my reputation. But the centerpiece of each envelope would be a personal letter explaining exactly what had happened and why I had chosen to disappear from Amanda's life exactly as she had requested. Uncle Frank arrived at my condo at 5 o'clock, his face grim with determination. "I brought reinforcements," he announced, stepping aside to reveal my cousin David, the electrician Amanda had been embarrassed by, and my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister, who had driven 4 hours from Springfield after Uncle Frank called her. "Neil, honey, we've been talking as a family," Aunt Margaret said, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like vanilla and righteous anger. "What Amanda has done is unforgivable, but we want you to know that not everyone believed her stories." Cousin David set down a toolbox and cracked his knuckles. "Uncle Frank filled me in on everything. I've been waiting 3 years to tell someone what I really think about Amanda and that pretentious boyfriend of hers. What do you need us to do?" I explained the envelope plan, and within an hour we had an assembly line operation running at my kitchen counter. Aunt Margaret folded letters with the precision of someone who had volunteered at church fundraisers for 30 years. Uncle Frank copied documents with the methodical attention of a man who had spent his career in banking. Cousin David addressed envelopes his electrician's steady hands, creating perfect calligraphy. 50 guests, I said, checking my list against Amanda's seating chart. "Everyone who matters to her will know the truth before the night is over." The phone rang at 7:30. Amanda's name appeared on the caller ID and I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 7:45, then 8 o'clock, then every 10 minutes after that. By 9:30, she had left 6 increasingly frantic messages. "Neil, where are you? James is freaking out because something weird is happening with our credit cards. Call me back immediately. Neil, this isn't funny anymore. Our florist is saying there's a problem with payment, and our caterer wants to discuss some kind of billing issue. You need to fix this tonight. Neil, I swear to God, if you're playing some kind of game because you're upset about our conversation, you need to stop it right now. This is my wedding day tomorrow." I listened to each message with a growing sense of satisfaction. Amanda had spent 3 years treating me like a financial resource rather than a person. Now she was discovering what happened when that resource suddenly became unavailable. The climactic twist came at 10:15 when my phone rang with a call from Patricia Chen, Amanda's maid of honor and co-conspirator. "Neil, thank God," she said when I answered. "Amanda is having a complete breakdown. Something has gone wrong with all of your shared accounts and vendors are calling demanding immediate payment for tomorrow's services." "That's unfortunate," I replied calmly. "What do you mean that's unfortunate?" "You need to fix this. Amanda's entire wedding is falling apart. Patricia, I think there's been a misunderstanding. These aren't shared accounts. These are my personal accounts which I've secured because someone has been committing fraud in my name." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Patricia spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled, as if she were speaking to someone she now recognized as dangerous. "Neil, I think you're confused about the legal arrangements Amanda made. Everything she did was authorized." "Show me the authorization." "I'm sorry. Show me one document that I personally signed giving Amanda permission to use my credit or put liens against my property. One real document, not something you helped her forge." Another silence, shorter this time, but more loaded with implications. "Neil, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing. Amanda has documentation proving that you've been behaving erratically. If you continue down this path, she'll be forced to take legal action to protect herself. Patricia, tomorrow evening Amanda is going to discover that I've taken her advice and disappeared from her life forever. She's also going to learn what it's like to face the consequences of her choices without someone else paying the price." I hung up the phone and turned back to my family assembly line. We had work to finish and Amanda's wedding day was less than 12 hours away. The final envelope was sealed at 11:45. 50 packets containing the complete truth about Amanda's 3-year campaign of manipulation and fraud ready to be distributed to every person who mattered in her life. As I looked around my condo one last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete control over my own life. Tomorrow, Amanda would get exactly what she had asked for. I would disappear from her life forever. But unlike her, I would leave behind the truth. I woke up at dawn in a hotel room across town, my phone buzzing with 17 missed calls from Amanda and 12 from James. The voicemails had progressed from confused to angry to desperate, but I didn't need to listen to them. I knew exactly what was happening at the condo. The new owners, a young couple named Sarah and Michael Thompson, had agreed to take possession at 6 in the morning. David Chen had explained to them that the previous tenants needed to vacate immediately due to a family emergency, and they had been happy to accommodate an early move-in that allowed them to avoid paying another month of rent on their current apartment. At 8:30, my phone rang with a call from David. "Neil, it's done," he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "The Thompsons are in, and they've already changed the locks as we discussed. Your sister showed up at 7:15 with a truck full of flowers and decorations, but obviously we couldn't allow her access to someone else's property. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. There was some screaming, some threats about calling the police, and a lot of demands to speak with you immediately. The Thompsons were very understanding when I explained the situation. And the wedding vendors? 3 catering trucks arrived between 8 and 8:30. They're all demanding payment from someone before they'll set up anywhere else. The florist, the musicians, the photographer, they're all dealing with the same issue." I spent the morning at a coffee shop downtown, working on my laptop and watching the chaos unfold through text updates from Uncle Frank, who had positioned himself across the street from the condo with the dedication of a war correspondent. 9:15, Amanda is on the phone with someone crying. James is arguing with the catering manager. 9:45, a tow truck just arrived. Someone called to have the vendors' trucks moved for blocking the street. 10:30, Amanda just threw her phone at the wall of the building. It shattered. 11:15, Patricia Chen arrived with a team of bridesmaids. They're all standing around looking like someone died. At noon, I received a text from cousin David. Envelope distribution team is in position at the church. Uncle Frank confirmed the venue change to the community center on Oak Street. We're ready when you give the signal. Amanda had managed to secure the Oak Street Community Center, a location that was normally used for high school graduations and church potlucks. It was clean and functional, but a far cry from the elegant intimacy of my condo's living room with its downtown city views and hardwood floors. At 1:30, I sent the signal text to my family deploy envelopes. Aunt Margaret, Uncle Frank, and Cousin David had volunteered to play the role of helpful family members arriving early to assist with last-minute setup at the community center. What the wedding party didn't know was that each of them carried a bag containing 50 manila envelopes, and they were about to transform Amanda's reception tables into something very different from what she had planned. The envelopes were placed with surgical precision. Each table setting received one manila envelope positioned next to the dinner plate where it couldn't be missed. The envelopes were unlabeled, looking like they could contain anything from wedding programs to thank you notes from the bride and groom. At 3 o'clock, I received confirmation that the mission was complete. Every guest who attended Amanda's wedding would find an envelope containing the complete truth about her 3-year campaign of lies, manipulation, and fraud. The wedding ceremony itself proceeded as scheduled, though Uncle Frank reported that Amanda looked like someone who hasn't slept in 3 days and has been crying for most of them. James apparently had spent the morning making increasingly desperate phone calls to his own family trying to arrange emergency funding to cover the vendors who were demanding immediate payment. "The irony is beautiful," Uncle Frank texted. James is discovering what it feels like to have someone else's financial problems become his responsibility. At 5 o'clock, the guests began arriving at the Oak Street Community Center for the reception. I imagine them walking into the utilitarian space with its fluorescent lighting and folding chairs, such a contrast to the elegant downtown venue they had been expecting. But the real transformation would begin when they found their seats and noticed the manila envelopes. At 5:45, my phone rang with a call from Amanda. I answered on the 3rd ring. "Neil." Her voice was raw, exhausted, but still carrying the edge of someone who believed she could manipulate her way out of any situation. We need to talk. Hello, Amanda. How was your wedding day? You know how it was. You destroyed it. But it's not too late to fix this. James and I are willing to forgive everything if you just call off whatever insane plan you're executing. I'm not executing any plan, Amanda. I'm simply granting your wish. You asked me to disappear from your life forever, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I didn't mean literally disappear, you idiot. I meant stop being so needy and dependent. The casual cruelty in her voice was remarkable even after everything I had learned about her true nature. She was sitting at her own wedding reception surrounded by guests who were opening envelopes that exposed her as a fraud and a thief, and she still believed she could insult me into submission. Amanda, by now your guests have found some reading material at their tables. I thought they might be interested in learning the truth about our family relationship. The silence that followed was so complete I wondered if the call had dropped. When Amanda spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. What did you do? I told them the truth. About the condo ownership, about the forged documents, about your campaign to destroy my reputation while stealing my money. I thought honesty might be refreshing after 3 years of manipulation. You son of a... The line went quiet as Amanda apparently realized that screaming profanity wouldn't improve her situation. I also wanted to let you know that the condo sold this morning. The new owners took possession at 6, which is why you couldn't access the property for your original venue. I'll be using the proceeds to start fresh in a new city just like you wanted. Neil, you can't do this. You can't just destroy my entire life because you're upset about a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Amanda. You forged my signature on loan documents. You put liens against my property without my knowledge. You spent 3 years telling everyone I'm mentally unstable while systematically stealing my money. I paused, watching the sun set through my hotel room window. This isn't about a misunderstanding. This is about consequences. Through the phone, I could hear voices in the background growing louder and more agitated. The guests had clearly begun reading the contents of their envelopes. Neil, people are leaving, Amanda said, and for the first time her voice carried genuine panic rather than manipulative anger. They're actually leaving my wedding reception. That's unfortunate. James is talking about calling off the marriage. He's saying I lied to him about our financial situation. Did you? That's not the point. The point is that you're destroying my entire future over some petty family disagreement. The absurdity of her statement was breathtaking. After 3 years of systematic betrayal, she still characterized her behavior as a minor family disagreement, and my response as petty revenge. Amanda, you told me yesterday that the perfect wedding gift would be me disappearing from your life forever. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. But you didn't mean I should actually leave. You just meant I should quietly accept being robbed and lied about while continuing to finance your lifestyle. The background noise was getting louder. I could hear James's voice raised in anger, though I couldn't make out the words. Neil, please, I know I made some mistakes, but you're my brother. Family doesn't abandon each other over money. You're absolutely right, Amanda. Family doesn't abandon each other over money. But you abandoned me 3 years ago when you decided I was nothing more than a financial resource to be exploited. Today, you're just discovering that resources can be withdrawn. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Amanda had asked for my disappearance, and I was finally giving her the complete experience. Outside my hotel window, the city sparkled with evening lights, full of possibilities I had never allowed myself to consider. For the first time in 3 years, my future belonged entirely to me. Tomorrow I would be gone, and Amanda would begin learning how to solve her own problems without someone else paying the price. I spent Sunday morning packing the few possessions I had retrieved from the condo before the sale, but my phone kept buzzing with updates from family members who had remained at the wedding reception to witness the aftermath. The reports painted a picture of complete social and financial collapse that was both shocking and oddly satisfying. Uncle Frank's text messages read like dispatches from a disaster zone. 6:30. James stormed out after reading his envelope. He's apparently been told that Amanda's family was wealthy and that marrying her would secure his financial future. Learning that she's actually deep in debt and facing potential fraud charges didn't match his expectations. 7:15. Patricia Chen is trying to convince remaining guests that the documents are fabricated, but Aunt Margaret is cheerfully confirming that everything is real and that she witnessed Amanda's behavior firsthand. 8 o'clock. Amanda locked herself in the community center bathroom and won't come out. The catering staff wants to know who's going to pay them before they clean up. 8:45. James returned with his parents and a lawyer. They're demanding that Amanda sign documents absolving James of any financial responsibility for her debts before they'll proceed with the marriage. But the most revealing update came from cousin David, who had positioned himself near the head table to observe Amanda's complete meltdown. Neil, you need to understand what's happening here. Amanda isn't just upset about the wedding disaster. She's genuinely shocked that her actions had consequences. She keeps saying this isn't how it was supposed to work. Like she honestly believes she could treat you like garbage forever without any repercussions. At 10 o'clock Sunday morning, my phone rang with a call from Patricia Chen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Neil, we need to discuss damage control, Patricia said without preamble. Amanda is having a complete breakdown. James is threatening to leave her, and half the wedding guests are talking about calling the police about the fraud allegations. That sounds like a lot of problems that aren't mine to solve. Don't be ridiculous. You created this mess and you're going to help fix it. Patricia's voice carried the sharp edge of someone who was used to intimidating people into compliance. Amanda made some mistakes, but destroying her entire life is an overreaction. Patricia Amanda didn't make mistakes. She committed crimes. Multiple felonies, actually. The only reason she's not already in jail is because I chose not to press charges. You can't be serious about the legal implications. Amanda is young and confused about financial matters. Any reasonable court would see this as a family misunderstanding rather than criminal behavior. The casual dismissal of 3 years of systematic fraud was remarkable, even coming from someone who had helped create the forged documents. Patricia was still trying to manipulate the narrative, even as Amanda's entire social circle was learning the truth about her behavior. Patricia, I have a question for you. When you helped Amanda forge those legal documents, did you think about what would happen to me if I had tried to dispute her claims? Did you consider that you were helping her destroy my reputation and my financial security? The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if she had hung up. Neil, I don't know what you think you know, but I never helped Amanda with anything illegal. I have copies of the documents, Patricia. Your law firm's letterhead, your electronic signature, your fingerprints on papers that were designed to make me look mentally incompetent. Those were precautionary measures. Amanda was worried about your emotional stability after your parents' death. We were trying to protect both of you. By fabricating evidence that I was too unstable to own property or make financial decisions, by creating documentation that would allow Amanda to get you professional help if your behavior became dangerous. The twisted logic was breathtaking. Patricia had convinced herself that helping Amanda steal my home and destroy my credit was actually a form of mental health intervention designed to protect me from my own instability. Patricia, I want you to listen very carefully. I'm leaving this city today and I'm never coming back. Amanda will have to face the consequences of her choices without my financial support. If she wants to avoid criminal charges, she'll need to make arrangements to pay back what she stole and stop lying about me to our family. And if she can't do that, then she'll discover what it feels like to solve problems without manipulating other people into fixing them for her. I hung up and immediately called Rachel Martinez, my attorney. Rachel, I need to know my legal options if Amanda continues her harassment campaign after I leave town. Neil, given the evidence you've provided, you could have her arrested tomorrow if you wanted to pursue criminal charges. The identity theft alone carries a potential sentence of 2 to 5 years. Rachel paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. But honestly, I think your current strategy is more effective than prison would be. What do you mean? Amanda has spent 3 years believing that her actions don't have consequences because you've been protecting her from reality. Removing that protection and forcing her to face the natural results of her behavior will teach her lessons that prison couldn't. And legally, you're completely protected. She has no claim to your property, no legal standing to challenge the sale, and no grounds to dispute the debt reversals. If she continues to harass you or spread false information about your mental health, we can pursue restraining orders and defamation claims. At noon, I received a call from James Morrison's father, Robert Morrison, a man whose voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to solving problems with money and influence. Mr. Harrison, this is Robert Morrison, James's father. I think we need to have a conversation about this situation between you and your sister. What kind of conversation? The kind where reasonable adults find mutually beneficial solutions to complicated problems. His tone was smooth, professional, the voice of someone who had spent years negotiating business deals. I understand there have been some financial misunderstandings, but I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer to help resolve everything quickly and quietly. I'm listening. $50,000 cash in exchange for your agreement to restore Amanda's access to the joint accounts and to publicly retract the allegations you've made about her behavior. The offer was insulting on multiple levels, but I was curious about the reasoning behind it. Mr. Morrison, why would you pay $50,000 to resolve what you're calling a misunderstanding? Because James is my only son, and this scandal is threatening his reputation in our social circle. If word spreads that his wife is involved in fraud allegations, it could damage his career prospects. So you're not concerned about whether the allegations are true. I'm concerned about managing the situation in a way that protects my family's interests. The casual assumption that everything could be solved with money was remarkable. Robert Morrison was offering to pay me to pretend that 3 years of systematic fraud had never happened solely to protect his son's social standing. Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in helping James avoid the consequences of marrying someone who lies and steals. That's a choice he'll need to live with. Mr. Harrison, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation you've created. My family has significant influence in this city's business community. If you continue down this path, you may find it difficult to maintain your professional reputation. The threat was delivered with the casual confidence of someone who had used intimidation to solve problems for decades. But Robert Morrison had made a critical miscalculation. I was already leaving town, and I no longer cared about maintaining relationships with people who thought money could erase fraud. Mr. Morrison, your son, married a woman who has been committing felonies for 3 years. That's not a public relations problem. That's a criminal justice problem. If you want to protect James, I suggest you help him understand that staying married to Amanda makes him an accessory to her ongoing fraud. I hung up and turned off my phone. The Morrison family's problems were no longer my concern, and Amanda's problems had never been my responsibility to solve. At 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, I loaded my car with everything I owned that mattered: clothes, laptop, a few family photos, and the cashier's check for $575,000 from the condo sale. My destination was Seattle, where a software company had been trying to recruit me for 6 months. The salary was 30% higher than my current job. The city was 3,000 miles away from Amanda's drama, and no one there knew anything about my family's history. As I drove out of the city where I had spent 28 years, my phone buzzed with one final text message from an unknown number. Neil, this is James. I wanted you to know that I'm filing for annulment. Amanda lied to me about everything, including the extent of her debts and her mental health issues. I don't know if this helps you feel better about what you did, but you probably saved me from years of financial disaster. Good luck with your new life. The message was unexpected, but it confirmed what I had suspected about James's motivations for marrying Amanda. He had been attracted to what he thought was her family's wealth, not to Amanda herself. When he discovered that she was actually a liability rather than an asset, his interest evaporated immediately. By Sunday evening, I was 500 miles away, staying in a hotel in Denver, and preparing for the next phase of my journey. Amanda had gotten exactly what she asked for. I had disappeared from her life forever. But unlike her, I had left behind the truth, and the truth had consequences she was only beginning to understand. 6 months later, I was sitting in my apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle, watching the morning sun illuminate the Space Needle through my kitchen window. The software company had not only hired me, but promoted me to senior developer after just 3 months impressed with work that came naturally when I wasn't constantly stressed about family drama and financial manipulation. My phone had remained silent for most of those 6 months. I had changed my number, deleted my social media accounts, and created a clean break from everyone connected to my old life. The peace was remarkable. For the first time since our parents' death, I woke up each morning thinking about my own goals rather than Amanda's problems. But Uncle Frank had found a way to reach me through my new employer's human resources department, and his email painted a picture of consequences that were both predictable and satisfying. Neil, I hope you're doing well in your new life. I wanted to update you on what's been happening here, though I suspect you've moved beyond caring about most of this. Amanda and James's marriage lasted exactly 4 days after the wedding. James's family lawyer arranged an annulment based on fraud, citing Amanda's misrepresentation of her financial situation and mental health. James has apparently moved to Chicago to work for his uncle's investment firm, far away from the scandal. Amanda moved back into our old family home in Riverside after losing access to the downtown condo. She's been working 2 jobs trying to pay back the vendors from the wedding, though Patricia Chen was fired from her law firm after her role in the document forgery came to light. But here's the part that might actually interest you. Amanda has been going to therapy. Real therapy, not the fake mental health crisis she tried to pin on you. Aunt Margaret insisted on it after Amanda showed up at her house demanding money and making threats. The therapist, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, no relation to the senator, specializes in narcissistic personality patterns and family financial abuse. According to Aunt Margaret, Amanda has been forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about her behavior over the past 3 years. Amanda asked me to give you this letter if I ever found a way to contact you. I'm not suggesting you respond or that you owe her anything, but I thought you should know that she's finally beginning to understand what she put you through. Attached to Uncle Frank's email was a scanned document written in Amanda's familiar handwriting. Neil, I don't know if you'll ever read this, and I don't expect you to forgive me or want me back in your life. But Dr. Warren says that making amends requires complete honesty about what I did, even if the person I hurt never responds. You were right about everything. I did forge your signature, I did use your credit without permission, and I did lie to our family about your mental health to justify taking control of your property. But the worst part, the part that took me months of therapy to admit, is that I convinced myself I deserved to do those things because you had always taken care of me. I turned your generosity into evidence that I was entitled to your sacrifice. When you paid for my college, I decided that meant you owed me a comfortable life forever. When you let me live in your home, I decided that meant it was partially mine. When you supported my wedding plans, I decided that meant you existed to serve my happiness. Dr. Warren says that abusers often target the people who love them most because they know those people are least likely to fight back. That's what I did to you. I abused your love because I thought it was unlimited and unconditional. The truth is that I have never made a major decision based on what was best for you or what you wanted. Every choice I made was about what Amanda wanted, and I used your love to pay for it. I treated you like an ATM that happened to have emotions, and I dismissed those emotions whenever they became inconvenient for me. I know now that when I asked you to disappear from our lives, I was asking you to complete a process I had already started. I had been erasing you as a person for years, turning you into just a function that supported my lifestyle. The only difference is that you finally stopped allowing it. I don't know how to undo 3 years of theft and lies. I'm working 2 jobs to pay back the wedding vendors, but it will take me years to repay what I stole from you. I've told everyone who will listen that the things I said about your mental health were lies designed to justify my behavior. Patricia Chen is facing criminal charges for the forged documents, but I haven't been charged because you chose not to press charges. I understand that was a gift I didn't deserve. I don't know if I can become a person worthy of your forgiveness, but I'm trying to learn how to live without manipulating other people into solving my problems. It's harder than I expected, but it's also the first honest thing I've done in years. You gave me exactly what I asked for when you disappeared. I thought I wanted a life without your judgment or your expectations. What I actually wanted was a life without consequences for my behavior. Those are different things. And learning the difference has been the most painful education of my life. I hope you're happy in whatever life you've built without me. I hope you found people who appreciate your generosity instead of exploiting it. And I hope that someday, if I become someone better than who I was, you might be willing to know that person. Your sister Amanda. I read the letter 3 times looking for the manipulation tactics that had become so familiar over the years. But the language was different from anything Amanda had ever said to me. There was no subtle guilt, no implied obligation, no suggestion that I owed her anything in return for her acknowledgement of wrongdoing. 2 weeks later, I met Sarah Chen, no relation to Patricia, at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market. Sarah was a project manager at a nonprofit that provided financial literacy education to young adults, and we had been introduced by a mutual friend at a software developers meetup. "So you just picked up and moved across the country on your own?" she asked, stirring sugar into her latte. "That's either very brave or very impulsive." "Probably a little of both," I replied. "But sometimes you have to choose between being comfortable and being free. Family pressure, family exploitation. I spent 3 years supporting someone who saw my generosity as weakness rather than love." I paused, surprised at how easy it had become to summarize my situation without anger or bitterness. I finally realized that enabling someone else's harmful behavior doesn't help either of you. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I see that a lot in my work. People think they're being kind by protecting someone from consequences, but they're actually preventing that person from learning and growing." Exactly. The kindest thing I could do for my sister was to stop allowing her to treat me badly. It forced her to confront her own behavior instead of blaming me for her problems. 3 months after receiving Amanda's letter, I made a decision that would have been impossible during my years of financial and emotional servitude. I wrote her a response not because I owed her one, but because I chose to. "Amanda, I received your letter through Uncle Frank. I appreciate your honesty about what happened and your acknowledgement that your behavior was abusive rather than merely selfish. I'm not ready to resume any kind of relationship, and I may never be. But I wanted you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I've built a good life here in Seattle free from the constant stress of wondering when you would next manipulate or betray me. I hope you continue with therapy, and that you learn to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. I hope you develop the ability to solve your own problems instead of expecting other people to sacrifice their well-being for your convenience. Most importantly, I hope you learn that family love should be mutual. The person who loves you shouldn't disappear in the process of supporting your dreams. I won't be returning to our hometown, and I won't be resuming financial support for your lifestyle. But if you ever become the kind of person who can maintain healthy relationships based on equality and respect, I'll be willing to consider limited contact. Good luck with your recovery, Neil." 2 years later, Sarah and I bought a house together in Queen Anne, a neighborhood with tree-lined streets and a view of Elliott Bay. Our relationship was built on the foundation I had never experienced with my family: mutual support, honest communication, and the understanding that love should enhance both people's lives rather than requiring one person to disappear. Amanda sent me a Christmas card that year with a brief note: 2 years of therapy, 1 year without lying or manipulating anyone, 6 months in a healthy relationship with someone who knows my complete history. Still working on becoming someone worthy of forgiveness, but making progress. Hope you're well. Hope. I didn't respond to the card, but I kept it. Not because I was ready to restore our relationship, but because it represented proof that people could change when they were finally forced to face the consequences of their actions. The life lesson that emerged from those 3 years of exploitation and betrayal was simple but profound. Enabling someone else's harmful behavior is not kindness. It's cruelty disguised as love. When you protect someone from the natural consequences of their choices, you prevent them from learning and growing. You also sacrifice your own well-being for the illusion that you're helping them. Real family love requires boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect. It should not require one person to disappear so another can be comfortable. The people who truly love you will want you to have your own dreams, your own goals, and your own identity that exists independently of their needs. Setting boundaries doesn't destroy relationships. It creates the possibility for healthy ones. When I finally stopped allowing Amanda to treat me badly, I gave her the opportunity to become a better person. When I stopped enabling her financial irresponsibility, I forced her to learn how to solve her own problems. The most important boundary I learned to set was this: I would no longer sacrifice my own well-being to protect someone else from the consequences of their choices. That boundary didn't just protect me. It created space for both of us to grow into healthier versions of ourselves. Today, I wake up in a home I share with someone who appreciates my generosity instead of exploiting it. I work at a job where my contributions are valued and rewarded. I have friendships based on mutual interests rather than one-sided financial support. Amanda got exactly what she asked for when she told me to disappear from her life forever. But in the end, my disappearance gave both of us something more valuable than the dysfunctional relationship we had been trapped in: the opportunity to discover who we really were when we weren't locked in patterns of manipulation and enabling. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to face their own life without you there to fix it for them. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were giving everything and getting nothing in return? How did you find the courage to set boundaries with someone who was taking advantage of your kindness? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming difficult relationships and building healthier boundaries. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing that it's possible to choose your own well-being without guilt. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships that enhance your life rather than diminish it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with respect, even when those people are family. Until next time, take care of yourselves and don't be afraid to demand the love and respect you deserve.